Hello ratbags, bit different video today for Ark Survival Evolved. We're going to be talking a bit about Atlas as well. But first off, timestamps are there. If you just want to hear about the patch notes, what's going on with updates for Xbox, PlayStation and PC in Ark, you can skip ahead to them little bits. If you're more interested in the Atlas stuff and how Ark and Atlas are kind of mucking each other up at the moment and developers are making some really poor decisions, then skip ahead to the timestamp there as well, where I'm going to talk about the failure of Atlas at the moment and why Ark has caused that. But kicking off, the ARK update stuff you need to know. It's looking likely it won't be necessarily this great big massive list you see. This was the update that went live just before the weekend on PC. In fact, there may be two updates. One update that has more console specific issues fixed this week, or keeping up to date with what was going on PC before this big update. And then we may see another update come next week with all of these fixes. PS4 is still lagging behind in terms of stuff and content. Xbox seems to have just had a little bit more of this stuff go through. So if you're playing single player or non-dedicated or unofficial servers, you may have to wait until next week to see a lot of the fixes and changes you want. There's still big problems with feroxes and creatures disappearing, people being DC'd every time they teleport or starting up certain missions. So there's definitely some big issues with ARK and Genesis at the moment. But yeah, according to said, that's what's going to be happening. They know that the PlayStation fan base is a little bit behind, but they don't think they're going to necessarily see the big fix coming this week. It will hopefully be next week, unless they do decide to do two updates. As ever, I'll drop the info you need. If there does have an update come, I'll try and give you exactly what's inside it. It does look like a lot of the patch notes have been cleared up a little bit, but just a quick recap, if you're brand new to Ark Survival Evolved in terms of how it's developed and what goes on, well, quite recently actually, a lot of the content that's available on official servers is pretty much on par with PC. In years gone by, PC stuff always gets it first, and then it will trickle down to console, and that would even apply to official servers. But it looks like Ark have actually taken a leaf out of Atlas's book. Atlas is cross-play between Steam and Xbox, and so they have to have their updates go out on both platforms obviously so they can all play together. It seems more and more that Ark Survival Evolved on official servers are doing exactly the same thing. They're able to keep their official network the same across PC, Xbox and PS4. It's just only people playing single player, non-dedicated or unofficial that have to wait a bit longer. And these are obviously the big GB updates that will come through. In the past, it was the other way round. Before you could have your servers working correctly, you'd often have to have big updates going into the game. But I have noticed that according to the patch notes at least anyway, it does look like they are doing more and more to make sure that at least the official network has got the latest fixes and issues done. So yeah, PS4 maybe an update this week, Xbox probably an update this week. Otherwise, we're going to see big updates hitting next week on console. It is a bit crap, that'll be a month literally after the launch of Genesis. And I've had to wait that long for some stuff that I just think could have probably been put out a lot sooner if Wildcard had actually just devoted a bit more time to console development or got some more support for the people that are doing it. If you don't know, and I've said it before, but Abstraction used to be the people that ported over the stuff to consoles. They're a private separate company and they're quite expensive, but you generally get a lot more quality with them and they're more quick and eager to work because they know how to do the port jobs a lot better, frankly. But they haven't actually worked on ARK since Aberration came out. That was the last thing they did for them. Extinction, Valguero, all that stuff, any updates, any content like the Homestead update, that was all done by Wildcard and its other little studios it has. Now it's got a bunch of these smaller ones that it works with, and it's worked with them actually since the Xbox launch, but it seems like they just don't have enough development resources or Wildcard aren't giving them enough time because the console versions of Genesis at the moment is just pretty bad and it's affecting the rest of the game as well. I'm not going to be too much of a rag on this, I could save that for the review I'm doing, which I have had to change substantially. I pretty much did give Genesis pretty good glowing praise. I like what they've done with a lot of the stuff in it, but the updates, the lack of attention, the lack of preparation and testing has really made me change my opinion of it, and I will be giving it a bit more of a re-evaluation in the next couple of days. You might ask what's the point in doing a review since it's already like nearly 3 weeks since it came out, but it's more just an opinion about how well it's gone and if ever Wildcard might actually take some lessons and use them next time. So, lots of issues. You're probably going to be asking the same questions everyone's been asking in the last few weeks. Is Mind Wipe working now? No, it's not even on PC. There's still problems with the PC patch, and as I said, there's still big problems with teleporting, missions not starting, dedicated servers not being there, and Primitive Plus servers still not necessarily appearing. Once we do get the updates live on the platforms of Xbox and PlayStation, I will go through all the patch notes. While you're downloading it, you can have me on in the background telling you exactly what's happening. But I did want to move on to something a bit more interesting and kind of shows how they develop stuff at Wildcard and their sister studio Grapeshot. Do you remember Grapeshot? Wildcard basically split their team in two, made some of them go and work on Atlas, and while the rest continued on ARK. Atlas was a mod on Ark Survival Evolved that was developed by people at Wildcard, not just some random dude sitting in his basement. And they liked the idea so much they decided to make it its separate own standalone game. I could be here all day talking about the highs and many lows of Atlas in the last year and a bit since it came out. I've definitely categorised it a lot when talking about the game, saying how dead it had got at one stage, but the introduction of the Xbox players really gave it a bit of a boost. They had brand new plans and brand new roadmaps back in September, talking about where they were going to be changing stuff and going forward. They got rid of a lot of the content, or not spoke about it as much, and try and change and focus on the stuff that everyone had been asking for, which is making Atlas more enjoyable and more of a pirate game. So things were starting to look up. In August it had one of its lowest player counts ever once more, but September and October brought a bunch of new people and they carried on playing it all throughout till to January. Now ARK and Atlas do serve the kind of same player base, and so it's not unusual to see obviously ARK fans maybe going and giving Atlas a try, especially when you're waiting for brand new DLC. But once again, Atlas is losing its players. It's on a downward trajectory, and it just doesn't seem to be able to keep its player base there, even with the influx of the Xbox people. And there's a few reasons for that, but clearly a lack of updates has not helped. You had a bunch of new players come in October, and they decided not to really update the game for 5 months. They have introduced a couple of little quality of life updates, changing a few things. Atlas had an update on February the 6th, and it's pretty much just a few minor bug fixes. It looks like they've only really had a little small skeleton crew doing stuff on it, with the majority of the development team helping out on ARK and Genesis. So yeah, not a great look. They're meant to be running in tandem, they're meant to have 2 separate studios working on both these games, but when they decide they need to, the founders of the game can pull them from one to the other, and that's not that uncommon. Big studios do it all the time. Ubisoft, Rockstar, you name it, they've all pulled development teams from other games to help out on the current one. But it's still just a bit of a shitty situation that a game that's actually out is actually not just being prototyped or being made, but is out there in the wild, players are playing it. It's kind of treated a bit like it's still in the prototype phase. Early access doesn't mean you can just ignore your players for 5 months. So what is the reason though? Why is Atlas not getting any big updates other than just maybe helping out with Genesis? I mean, that's a pretty big thing, and even with that additional help, Genesis still managed to delay itself twice, coming out nearly 3 months later than it was meant to. Well, it does look like there's been some trouble behind the scenes. Back last summer, they announced that Eric Wannerman was going to be the brand new lead game designer of Atlas. Someone that didn't really have a lot of experience running his own game or running a big game. As far as I could tell, he hadn't done much at all. So fairly someone new and young, and that's okay. Maybe he's obviously got lots of ideas. But he has now left Wildcard or Grapeshot and is now working on Bloodlines 2, The Masquerade. It looks like, and I've heard some grumblings and rumours, that he wasn't best pleased with the changes that were made with his development team having to help out on ARK and Genesis, and the way that the big hotshots, the founders of the game, keep changing stuff up and not really communicating with the people that are making their game. Whether they're under pressure from their publishing company Snail Games, I'm not too sure. The founders have always kind of had a bit of a big say in ARK Survival Evolved and what it does, whereas Snail Games, their owners, they're kind of the ones that go and do stupid stuff like release things like Dark and Light and then forget about it for like 18 months. But either way, the developer of Atlas has now quit, and there's no announcements, no news about who's going to be taking over. And so while everyone's loving Genesis at the moment, again, record numbers of players playing it, spare a thought for Atlas. Some might argue it's karma. Extinction was meant to come out in the spring of 2018. That's what it said on the season pass when ARK came out of early access in 2017. Expect to see the second expansion by the spring 2018. But Wildcard all of a sudden dropped their mysterious Atlas trailer by accident on YouTube, and then all of a sudden Extinction was delayed. Well, in fact, not even delayed, they never even gave it a full proper final date of coming out in spring. They just decided to move it to winter and hoped no one would notice. And judging by the way that development went, they employed a new lead designer to work on the Extinction DLC, but even the Extinction DLC launched in a pretty shit, poor, broken state. And then Atlas launched literally only a month later. Again, Atlas launched in a terrible state too. Now the general consensus is that if Wildcard hadn't started working on Atlas, we would have definitely seen a much better Extinction DLC than we saw, and it wouldn't regularly be voted the worst DLC they've ever done. And so it's interesting to see that it's gone round the other way now. Instead of Atlas ruining another DLC, DLC has kind of ruined Atlas. I do appreciate Wildcard want to be bigger than they are. They don't want to be just some small indie developer, and they want to be able to make different style games, even if they do use lots of the old game to make them. You might have seen all the memes from the launch of Atlas that players found out it was literally ARK with just a skin, and the Atlas was in the ARK engine, or they used so many of the assets. I don't have a problem with that. That's what all game companies do. Taking a look at the NPC enemy types you fight in Genesis DLC for the boss battle, and they're clearly repurposed NPCs from Atlas, and it looks like there's a lot of changes, good and bad, going back and forth between both games. But at some point you've got to be able to recognise when you keep putting out turds, you can't always polish them up into diamonds. And that's exactly what's been going on with Wildcard for the longest of times. Put content out there, hype it up, and then just let it fall to the wayside and not support it enough. Primitive Plus, come and gone, doesn't get any support, hasn't been supported for 18 months or so. ARK Survival Evolved on Switch hasn't had a single bug fix update since it launched a year and a bit ago. That was the last thing Abstraction did for Wildcard, porting the Switch version. Wildcard refused to talk or engage anyone about the situation with Switch, why it's only got the island, none of the free DLC or even the paid stuff or new content. Think about the cancelled projects like SOTF and Primal Survival. Again, all hyped up so they'd look really big, be in the news, and then quickly forgotten about and cancelled some months later. And even the DLCs that ARK produce, they are just often really launching in poor ways, buggy, broken, and then take weeks and weeks, sometimes months to fix, let alone the poor state of them on consoles. So Wildcard, wake up, stop reaching for the stars. It's all well and good getting hype and crying about the fact you've got so many players playing your game on Steam. Players aren't stupid, they will start recognising you are just a bit shit at getting this kind of stuff done. Concentrate on what you have instead of trying to aim and do really shit jobs on new stuff. Imagine what ARK would be right now if it hadn't spent 6 months wasting time on Atlas. We could have had a bunch of brand new DLCs for ARK, free maps and paid. We could have had bug fixing, long overdue TLC. Instead we get knee-jerk reactions to stuff, trying to turn around poor reviews of Genesis by announcing that the Crystal Isles would be coming. They haven't even started work on it. They literally only cemented the deal for the Crystal Isles map to come a few days before the rest of the world knew. Clearly Wildcard want to keep up their popularity, and they're doing the usual thing of showing us nice shiny new stuff, but not actually ever fixing their core game or improving it. Maybe apart from just the core ideas of Genesis being a bit different from what ARK players are used to, it could be also down to the buggy state it launched in, hence why it's only got 40% positive reviews on Steam. And now that approach is affecting Atlas more than ever. Another game that's ended up going to have development hell for the next 6 months as it tries and finds another lead game designer to come on board. And if they don't get someone new, it means they're going to be taking someone away from Wildcard and ARK, which means ARK will then again suffer. There is no other game like ARK Survival Evolved, there really isn't. Good and bad, unfortunately though. Fantastic ideas, great ways to engage with the players sometimes, but all too often focused on new and shiny and not focused on what players want, which is stability, fixes, and making sure your product actually is top dollar. But good luck to Eric, he wasn't around long. Let's hope the next one will be, and hopefully he can turn around Atlas and make it something that people actually want to play. That's if he's given a chance. So there we go guys, just a little bit of an opinion piece there about Atlas and ARK. This is what I do. I give you the news, but I will always give you my opinion and try and delve underneath what's happening with ARK. Beneath the bullshit and the arse licking that other YouTubers continuously do. I try and show you the good and, unfortunately, the bad, darker side of ARK and Wildcard. As I said, I'll be back with that update video once we get more information, what's happening with Xbox, PlayStation, or expect to see it as part of my Access show taking a look at all the survival roundup news. Until next time, I'll see you later.